Most of it's the Oregon coast on 101, but there's a poem from Greece and Mexico and California in here. They're all fairly short. First one's called Off the Map. A time or two, the devil's red shadow has overlapped my own, but a survivor may laugh, running, stumbling down the broken road. Time to kill, time to heal. The scars along my body, a legend of place, circumstance, and distance. A terrain searched and backtracked 40 years to the first of my psilocybin days. A beautiful day in January when I tripped and fell and rose all day in the Pacific, as if some strange god had reinvented me. Each day since, a lost thing, but intricate, delicate, holy. This is from my travels in Greece as a young man, near Corinth. The moon's affinity for these ruins, bone bright and barren, they seem to be made of the same worn stone. I sit here, unable to finish my single, endless song about the fallen city, the distant day when it was young, as it flourished, then as it perished. Long before my brothers journeyed to the moon, danced awkwardly in the dust, and just as quickly returned to earth to build, to tend, and wonder at their own beloved ruins. Crow and gull. Gray wings, black wings converge upon the rotting feast, but there is no quarrel here. They gouge and peck away in a harmony unknown to me. I turn from them, amused, appalled, a man whose share is very much his own, a soul who doesn't know his hunger from his greed. Beachcombers. A bed wide and warm between the cliff and shore, where we gladly wrestle. Our changing shape casts an animal shadow. Love's eight-legged beast, moaning, and the sun, a witness, burning. I placed this somewhere in California, someplace I've never been, so forgive me if you're from, say, Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo. Anyway, it's somewhere down there. So. It's called Golden West. Somehow there is a serenity beneath or behind the city's bloody headlines. There might be redemption somewhere near, though we know our sorrows by a million different names. The drought is never over. Sprinklers keep the lawns lush and green. There is a blue sky and smoke from 1,000 barbecues. Each of us, as cruel as we are loving, is a devourer of flesh. I've had luck or fortune, a good life handed to me. I do not know how to pray, but I wish for anyone, everyone, something better, some kinder fate. In the small worlds of their glass tanks, bright and colorful fish have gone belly up. The sun is setting in the Pacific. A gold watch follows a lifeless arm into the bathtub. Another long, hard day is nearly done. And this is the last of the beach poems. 11 years ago, we took a family vacation to Mexico. This is called We Ask the Dead, Sayulita, 2005. In the hills and in the hollows, we beseech the buried. In the sea beyond the shallows, we have asked the drowned. Will we sorrow when we follow, or is death the friend we haven't found? So as if my poems weren't sort of mournful enough. poems on war and tyranny. This one's, in this poem, the very symbol of peace is a broken thing. It's called the War Dove. Once white, gray now from my year-long passage through this kingdom's bleak corridor, this ditch of heaven, condemned to watch young soldiers die, to console them as their blood runs out, to fly again and weep upon the feeble and redeem a rag of hope from a meager prayer. Nurse of the spirit, I shiver in the sun. In the light of day or the battle's glare, I am a poor bedraggled symbol, painted a pale gray. Once kind, now weary from the blood, I yearn to join my stained-glass sisters, bright and pure, fixed as near to heaven as the earth allows, safe above the smoke, still, so high and still. This poem's called The Tyrant, and it could be a number of different people. Your favorite fascist. There's a pretty obvious reference to Mussolini in here, but this poem first came about in the failing years of the Ceausescu regime in Romania. So that's sort of when this poem started, and I've kind of worked on it off and on over the years. Called The Tyrant. His legendary bones will never be forgotten. He has emerged from the tangle of war after war, smiling in his overcoat of smoke and blood. For years we prayed his guns were ornament, but they are not. He was the young protagonist none of us can stomach now, the tyrant with the famous fist who conquered us flat. Alive or dead, we all play dead, as quiet and still as we can be. He's baking something nasty in the oven of his skull. His lust is that of bridges burning. His black shirt's thugs are scheming. The monster dreams of love and wakes up screaming. This is a Aghazal. It's a ancient Persian form of poetry written in couplets. Each couplet can be its own idea or its own image, and hopefully they work together to form a bigger picture. Often the last couplet in a Aghazal is an address to the self or a reference to the self. Turns out practically all the stanzas in this are a reference to the self. It's united by the theme of winter, which we're still in, having a doozy back east. Winter Aghazal. A dozen sparrows keep their distance. I am the bad bird, a black and solitary formation of one. The iceberg splits in two. The cello and the cellist drift from each other. There is no music to these memories. Kiss the cook, he is hungry. Kiss him, he is starving mad. I am standing on the corner shivering, selling tickets to my disappearance. Trapped in the folds of a painted fan, the peacock, the dragon and I, useless, waiting for winter's end. The warehouse is cold and empty, a church of dust. Oh, faithless self, think how you could fill it. These last poems have a certain chronology, from young adulthood to the present. Driving nowhere. November or some other dour month, but the sky was darkly jeweled, here and there a touch of silver. Somewhere else the sun was a small spent coin. The streets were wet and rum-blurred. She and I had spent the afternoon in bed, celebrating the luxuries of the unemployed, and we were driving her old car towards some unknown, telling our stories, singing, laughing. She had been a sight for sore eyes, a lowly prophet's lofty vision. I'd planned on keeping her, but her souls of her kind are far too fair and so elusive. And often, in a funny way, she made me more than a little nervous, as she was just then, driving 50 down the boulevard, steering, if you could call it that, with one long painted fingernail. I keep trying to write environmental poems, and most of them aren't very good, so I discard them. I'm fond of this one. I started years ago and finished recently. It's called A Boat on a Blue Maze. 40 years of April rain have made rivers of our streets. Our glory is half submerged, blue-gray beneath the water, the same above. We meander in our flood boats. A life is a lost thing, floating, doomed but for an inch of wood. Sometimes we are brave enough to lean over and observe ourselves, distorted in the watery mirror. Someday, when these fears have become routine, it will be good to die, to drown and sink into an afterlife. We pray our heaven will be dry. For now, there is no religion but the water, no philosophy but the rising river. In the heart of our city, the gondola is a knife separating silence from silence. The tugboat is a thug bullying the width of Broadway. The kayak is a black flame at the center of a blue dream. Hope rides the slow current. There's a world of canals, fragile cities rising up on stilts. This one's another poem sort of written in the Aghazal form, and it's about voices, various voices echoing through the author's mind, including some of his own voices. And they're loving voices, they're well-intended voices, but somehow they're failing the author. It's called Tell No One. In the attic, there is a jar of secrets, but the lid keeps coming off. Don't tell a soul. Daddy talked forever about a level playing field. Daddy is buried crookedly in that green field. Sissy, with her big sweet smile, calmed me then, told me there was no such place as hell. But these days, I can smell the roar. I can hear the distance shrinking. In senior English, Mr. Rose said literature is the thing that could make life sacred, but he was wrong. In these dark years, I swear it is the only thing. Mom said white lies were okay sometimes, even necessary. Master them and save yourself some grief. Outside there is a snowpack, decades deep. I have no strength or nerve or shovel for it. Once I built a radio from old bird bones. The coming spring will be a stage for the dead bird's song. Yesterday I took my scissors down to the river. Now there are two rivers, one in which I can swim, one in which I can drown. Two good rivers. If I tell you what you must hear, do not listen. There are too many truths. Tell no one. 4 years ago, I found myself without a job for the first time in decades, and I didn't really react well to it. It was a sort of a dark and an anxious time. Fortunately, it just lasted a week and a half, so landed on my feet. But anyway, I had just joined the Red Sofas a short time before that, and this started from a prompt from Michael Hanner, and it's what I worked on during that period. It kept me cheery. It's sort of a road poem, and not really real. I've never taken any kind of lengthy walking road trip. It's more a travels inward. Sort of happily influenced by Whitman and Chaucer and Italo Calvino. And it's called Next, and it's just about what's coming up next and not knowing and being okay with that. Next. The road today confuses me, my soul misshapen from its turns, the road itself a bent and broken thing, signs written in alien languages and obscured by early snow. Friend, pray for me that I might stumble steadily, elegantly past these darkening woods, green spires struggling upward toward our chosen or unchosen gods, absolute or absentee. From Mayberry to Mecca to Milwaukee and partway back, my travels so far have or have not prepared me for this step, the next step, and the next steps after that. I will not attempt to tame this given wilderness. I think that to find certain answers, one must run from other answers. And so I go into the world to seek the source of my bewilderment. Soon may my mirage turn into a very real tavern, beckoning me, welcoming me with its smiling strangers, dark ale and mason jars, and dancers in scarlet and lime green satin. May their lithe movements and their bright eyes soothe me, smooth the rougher edges of my jagged day. With luck tonight, I'll sleep in some roadside meadow, in some mossy cradle, where I will dream of other roads, other travels. And I'm going to finish with a little poem, fairly recent, written from now and looking back to as far back as I can remember, called Clothesline, 1955. Mom's blouses and dresses, Dad's shirts and trousers, all dancing in the April wind. I was an airy backyard dancer too, a kid as bold as I was bewildered, always smiling, dancing, less since then. I was 4. There were cold wars I didn't know of yet. Life seemed simple, and so I acted simply. Soon enough, the big fears would come to stay, and I would learn the arts of stillness and quietude. I would learn to hide in books, and all the wars and commerce and politics I've studied. Still, my pen is dancing here for you. Thanks so much.